Use this. Thanks. Yes. And that's the machine gun in action. But wait, how do we get from this sad loser handgun to this massive amazing machine gun? Well, it all goes back to the advancement in warfare in World War I.
What I just got shut down with was a machine gun, and I'm sure you're curious about what it is. The first well-known rapid-fire gun was the Gatling gun invented in 1861 by Richard Gatling, and it is the predecessor to the modern version we all know and love, the Maxim gun. First invented in 1884 by Hiram Maxim, the modern machine gun came into use in the late 19th century and was famous for its use in imperial conquest. It was used to rapidly shoot down people, leading to thousands of deaths per battle from its use alone. The Maxim gun became the standard and saw exponential growth in demand and use in the beginning of the 20th century. World War I saw the use of Maxim guns to skyrocket and murder people at a faster rate than ever before. Maxim guns were primarily used by the British, German, and Russian forces, while Austrians and the French used local designs. Good old American Isaac Lewis is the one who invented the famous Lewis gun, a light machine gun that was used on aircraft and by infantry in World War I, mainly used by the British as other countries used their own versions, such as the French's Chauchat and German's MG08-15. So everybody got a chance to use this mass-murdering machine.
So tens of thousands of Maxim guns were deployed during World War I. Its reign of superiority was soon to face a challenge, the flamethrower. The introduction of flamethrower marked a significant shift in the dynamics of World War I combat. Originating from the German army in 1914, these incendiary devices represented a new level of offensive capabilities on the battlefield. The Germans, in particular, learned the effectiveness of flamethrower, incorporating them into their tactical arsenal and leveraging their destructive power to achieve strategic objectives. As flamethrowers began to see deployment across the front line, they presented a formidable challenge to entrenched positions, breaking stalemates and ushering in new methods of engagement. In February 1916, flamethrower played a pivotal role in the German offensive in Verdun, prompting the expansion of flamethrower units within the German army. Later, as Germany shared its expertise with its allies, such as Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, the development of flamethrower increased. Look, here are some examples of flamethrowers in World War I. The introduction of flamethrower instilled fear and terror among soldiers, serving as both a physical and psychological weapon. Their versatility in assaulting enemies, neutralizing defenses, and instilling fear offered valuable capabilities to those who wielded them.
The use of poison gas in World War I marked a horrifying escalation in the brutality of warfare. On April 22, 1915, during the Battle of the Second Ypres, the Germans unleashed a devastating weapon that would forever change the course of history. Liquid chlorine gas billowed across the battlefield, bringing agonizing suffering and significant casualties with it. Despite the initial terror, Allied forces managed to regain control of the position at Ypres after several days of intense fighting. These weapons had the potential to alter the entire course of the war. However, the Allied forces responded quickly by developing effective gas masks for protection and even employed their own chlorine attacks in September 1915. As the war raged on, deadlier gases such as mustard gases were introduced, inflicting untold suffering on the battlefield. By the war's end, approximately 1 million soldiers had suffered gas-related injuries, many of whom would go on to experience debilitating health issues for years to come.
But even in the air, no one was safe as both sides of the war began to develop military aircraft. In the beginning of the war, most military aircraft were Zeppelins, notably used and retired by the Germans, and hot air balloons. These were only used for reconnaissance and info gathering. They proved useful as they provided information that could be used to win battles on land, like the Battle of Marne. However, it became clear over time that air superiority, a relatively new concept, was a major factor of success. Thus, militaries on both sides started to develop ways to fight in the air, using airplanes and fighter pilots. To attack from the sky, they needed to find a way to shoot at their enemies effectively. Normal guns often did not hit their targets while flying, so what could it do? The answer? Machine guns. That's right. Militaries began to look at attaching machine guns onto airplanes. In fact, Anthony Fokker created the interrupted gear, which allowed the machine gun located at the front of the plane to shoot past the airplane's propeller, creating the Fokker E1. And later, its British counterpart, the Sopwith Camel. No, not that type of camel, this kind of camel. This created the start of aces and dogfights, and fighter pilots/planes became more necessary than novel. Aircrafts were also used for other purposes. Germans started to use Zeppelins, for example, for combat, bombing British civilian areas. The Allies, in response, began to use military airplanes to defend them. Military air transport of supplies remained primitive. They literally just tossed supplies or bombs off the side of the aircraft. But pilot training made great strides to the more experienced in the air.
The success of German poison gas created the need for countermeasure against it. Enter the tank, or perhaps a land ship, an armored vehicle that protected those within. Its original iterations weren't exactly successful. However, after some tweaking, the tank successfully managed to gain its signature rhomboid shape. Soon after, the British military began training its men to properly handle these tanks. Each man was assigned one of 3 roles: gunner, loader, and driver. The names are self-explanatory. New methods were created and adapted to properly use these beasts during battle. At this time, tanks were cumbersome, slow, and technologically challenged. During World War I, the tank, though certainly a good idea, experienced something called failure. Their flaws outweighed their benefits, given that they tended to get stuck and then break down. Regardless, their presence on the battlefield prompted the creation of the anti-tank weapons. Like a counter thick steel hides, the tank would get its true chance to shine on the German side of World War II.
Meanwhile, in the seas, the Germans created the first submarines with the U-boats. Initially, they were only used to attack military warships. Using torpedoes to punch through the British blockade, these U-boats operating in the Atlantic were used to counter-blockade the British and was one of Germany's greatest advantages. U-boats aimed to weaken Britain before they weakened Germany. Despite only numbering 38 in the beginning, they won a lot against Britain, becoming a constant threat as the Allies struggled to counter them. However, Germany was hesitant to use them on merchant ships due to neutral powers. The USA... There's just one problem with that, though. They were losing supplies. Fast. Germany needs to weaken the Allies by blocking their access to food and oil. So what better way to do that than to sink merchant ships? Thus, in February 1915, they adopted unrestricted submarine warfare. Aggressive U-boat attacks on merchant ships, especially in American waters, motivated the U.S. to finally act. And in 1917, the U.S. finally joined the war, with unrestricted submarine warfare credited as a major reason. From there, it was a race against time. As the Germans began sinking boats left and right, the Allies, mainly America, began to crank out ships to replace them. However, the U-boats were ultimately outmatched.
World War I defined and revolutionized modern warfare. Now, as we look forward to the future, we can now see that only God and another...
Oh my god. I totally forgot I gave that to her. How did she modify it so fast? Lynn, no! Those are allies! Lynn! Wait, you should take a picture. Wait, you should totally edit that into a happy emoji. And edit that into a happy emoji.